moment. Okay, yeah. So sorry everyone for the technical difficulties. So we have so this is Finance Meets Real Estate. We have John Casmon here tonight. I'm really excited to talk to him actually, because he's not only a multifamily expert, he's also a marketing expert. That's something that I've been trying to learn about more, especially digital marketing. So I'm like super excited to hear now what he has to say. So he's the founder of Casmon Capital Group, and he has helped investors acquire $90 million worth of apartments. And yeah, so he's going to talk about how to establish confidence, credibility, and connections to raise money. And I think John prefers a more open format as well. So if you guys have any questions, or that would be perfect, so we can have a discussion as well. So that's everything. So as you guys know, we are on Meetup, and also please make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Finance Meets Real Estate on YouTube. So that's that. So with that, I'm going to pass it on to John.
Yeah, listen, I appreciate the warm introduction. I'm excited to be talking to you today, and for us to get a chance to see each other and to talk to the rest of the group. As you mentioned, I really want this to be more interactive. I mean, we're on Zoom. One of the advantages of a platform like this is the chance to kind of interact, ask questions, use the chat features. So what I'll do is I have a presentation, but I really want to make sure this is valuable to you, right? So if there's specific questions or a different direction we want to go, I'm very happy to make sure this is beneficial for the group. So you mentioned kind of my background, really focusing on multifamily and marketing. What I'd like to get is just if you're able to chat into the chat box, if you are looking to raise capital for real estate deals or for anything else for that matter, but if you're looking to raise capital for deals, can you put a 1 in the chat box just so I get a sense of what people are really looking for? Open this up so I can follow. This also gives me a chance to sneak a sip of tea. Okay, I see a lot of ones. Okay, good. Okay. All right, so a good number of people are looking to raise capital. And then how many people have already raised money for real estate or for anything else for that matter? Put a 2 in there if you've already raised some money and just kind of want to get better at it. So it looks like most people have not raised money yet, but are looking to raise money. And last question, I promise, before I get into presentation. If you have any real estate experience or any business experience as an entrepreneur, as corporate America or real estate, put a 3 in the chat box so I just get a sense of where we're coming from. Okay. So see a lot of 3s. Good. Okay, great. All right, so this helps me just give us some context. So what we'll do is we'll lean in on the conversation. We'll pause a couple different places just to make it interactive. I want to learn really what you guys want to hear, and we can pivot and take questions as we go. So I'll try to pause at different moments just so we can kind of engage and have some different questions. I didn't ask anything else for the 5, so I appreciate the 5, but nothing else coming right now. All right, cool. Let me put the presentation back up here. All right. Can you all see that on your screen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so let me move.
Anyone else, let me know if you can't see it.
All right, so today, I mean, what we're going to talk about is kind of what you started to allude to, right? Through my experience in raising capital for deals, what I've realized is that there are really 3 things that it takes, right? And I call them the 3 C's to attracting capital for multifamily. So we're going to get into those 3 C's and really start to understand what it takes to be successful, and not just to do it one time, but to kind of create the systems and the processes to do this multiple times so you can actually build a business around this. So if you're looking to build a business, that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. Okay. All right, let me get the right thing. All right, so we kind of already done this, right? But I'm going to get back to some Q&A here. What concerns do you have? I saw a lot of ones, but only one two. So it sounds like most people are interested in raising capital for deals, but haven't actually done that yet. So what are some of the concerns that you have about raising money? Would you mind just dropping that into the chat box so I can make sure we address some of those concerns? Common concerns I hear from people are like, little concerned about raising money from friends and family. Okay, I see paying people back, contracts and payback structures, lack of credibility, going full cycle on a deal. Yep. Do you set up an LLC specific for the raise, legalities, presentation experience? All right, Tracy, I'll get into your question a little bit. Appreciate that. Start fresh. Okay. Finding the people. So, I mean, it sounds like there's a combination of things here. So this is good. So I'm going to keep the questions up. I hope we address most of them as we get into the conversation, or at least give you a framework to think about how to address that. But as we get to the end, if there are questions I didn't address in here, when we get to the Q&A, let's make sure we talk about that, okay? But I see the lack of experience, the operating agreement, not having the network of accredited investors, a lot of great things in here. So we'll definitely get into some of this stuff here. All right, so let me give you a little bit more info on kind of my story. All right, so let me minimize this so I can see. All right, so my background is in corporate America. So I was a marketing executive. I've worked on major campaigns for different brands like Nike, Coors Light, Buick, Mountain Dew, and I spent most of my time working in marketing. What happened to me really goes back to 2008, 2009. And I was, doing my job, working like everyone else. And if you remember that time frame, I was working at General Motors. So we went into bankruptcy, and I recall distinctly just understanding the frustrations and challenges that my peers were going through. Some of them were losing their jobs after committing their entire life to this company. You work at General Motors corporate headquarters. These are lifers. These are people whose plan was to work that job until they retired. It was easy peasy. They didn't really think about other things. If they had investments, it was simply to grow their portfolio. They didn't think about, actually having other income coming in to support them and their family. And I saw people get hit with the reality that, man, this job is either gone or, it could be wiped out. And I faced that too. There was a day distinctly where I walked in and I remember there was a red light and they were having layoffs that day. There was a red light on my phone and it was a voice message. And I thought it was going to be come to HR. I spent about 20 seconds with my heart just beating really fast. And then my head was just spinning, racing through a bunch of different scenarios. And then ultimately, I listened to the voicemail, and it was one of my colleagues, and he had lost his job earlier that day. And he was one of those lifers, and he was trying to figure out what he was going to do to pay for his insulin. He was a diabetic, and he had spent 23 years for the company. He had no plan B. And as you know, the market, the automotive industry, it was suffering all around. So it wasn't like he could just go to another automotive company. The entire industry was going down. So I would distinctly remember that day realizing that, you know what, no matter what job I have, no matter how much success I have at this job, it's not guaranteed and it can be snatched away from me. And I know a lot of other people have been in similar situations where maybe you've been asked to take a pay cut or take a lateral move and not really get a real promotion. And just recognizing that you're just the cog in the wheel. When you work for a big company and big corporate, you're just a body. And you hate to look at it that way because a lot of us define ourselves by what we do, and it just hit me really hard that day. So I made it a point to start building my own investment portfolio. It took a while to get going, but I made it a point to say, you know what, I need to have my own sources of income coming in. I remember reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and a lot of people talk about Rich Dad Poor Dad as the book that got them to make that transition into real estate. It did that for me, but not the reason you think. The other big impact it had was he talks about working to gain experience and skills. And that was something that I really had to tap back into to say, you know what, I've been developing my skills as a marketer, and these skills are transferable. And I want you to think about that. We're going to come back to transferable skills. But those skills are transferable. And I had developed those skills working for these large brands. How else could I leverage those skills going forward? So that was something that went through my head. I started to build my personal portfolio. I ended up getting about 13 units worth around $1.5 million in Chicago while I was working in corporate America. And while I was growing my portfolio and a lot of things were going well, I hadn't gotten to the point where I felt I could replace my income or sustain a massive hit if I got let go from my job. And the reality is that the equity was great, but I needed the cash flow in order to, kind of sustain a lifestyle and continue to grow. I need to have the cash flow coming in. And I kept running out of my own money. I would buy a property, save up, as much money as we could, buy a property, save up as much money as we could, and buy a property. And I just realized that wasn't sustainable. That wasn't going to get us to the level that I wanted to be at where I could isolate myself or insulate myself rather from the various things that could happen that were out of my control. I started to learn about different strategies, and ultimately I started learning more about working with other investors and other people's money. And that's what we're going to center a lot of our conversation on today. So I started to reach out to folks on my network, and I tried a lot of different strategies. I hired a coach who kind of helped me, work some things out. But I struggled at first. I had some successful raises, but it was hard to replicate. And I was fearful that, hey, if I raise money one time for this deal and I put my investors in this deal, well, what happens if I find another deal? I just put all my money and put all my investors' money in this deal. So what am I going to do? So that was one of the challenges that I faced. Was like, hey, this is great, but if I get them in this deal, now what do I do? So I went through a bunch of challenges there. Right now, we are investors in around $90 million worth of real estate. We partner with other investors to get in on these deals. So we'll talk about building those partnerships and those relationships. A little bit more on me is, I host a lot of different things. So I host the Target Market Insights podcast. It's a multifamily and marketing show. If you're interested in learning more about the stuff we're talking about, I really sincerely ask you to check out the show. You should subscribe to it. We have a lot of great guests talking about multifamily investing, talking about marketing strategies, leveraging social media, email marketing, all sorts of things like that. So check out the podcast anywhere you listen to shows. And then I also host an event. It's called the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit. We've done it for 3 years. We're actually going to be pausing this year, but we'll bring it back in 2022. But it's an event where it's no pitch. We just get investors together and we can talk about investing strategies. And then last, I partner with other investors who are looking to be active. Those folks who are looking for assistance with their multifamily investing and marketing so they can go out and raise capital, actually consult and coach folks on how to take some of the best strategies and best practices that I've learned and implement it into their own business. Okay. So let's get to the meat of this thing, right? So, how do you attract capital for real estate? And why did I say attract instead of raise? Well, my first raise, I had a list of investors, and my goal was to reach out to these investors, tell them about this deal, and boom, it would send me the money to go out and invest. And I will tell you, it was not as easy as people make it sound. You talk to some folks and say the capital is easy, the money's everywhere. Just find a good deal, and the money will come. Yo, man, that's crap. It's crap. It's not real. And the reason I say that is it takes more than just having a good deal. And what it takes is you, right? It takes a lot about you. And the reason I say attract instead of raise is raising capital is you going out there picking up the phone, right? It's you making a lot of phone calls, a lot of conversations. Sorry. Um, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of effort on your part. But to attract, it's people coming to you, right? If I'm raising capital, that's me using my phone, calling these people, emailing these people. Hey, I got this deal. Hey, are you looking to invest? That's me out there being a salesman, right? Attraction, though, that's me letting people know what I do, what I offer, and letting them come to me and saying, hey, man, I'm interested in that thing you've got going on. And attracting capital for deals is much easier than raising capital. It's the difference between a push pull strategy, right? If I'm pushing something, if I'm pushing a message, if I'm pushing you guys to join something or do something, that's me pushing you. And you're going to have a little bit of resistance because I'm pushing. That's the natural reaction. You get pushed, you want to push back a little bit. But to attract, that's to bring someone in, that's to pull you in, that's to make you come closer to me, right? So attracting capital is where we want to be, not necessarily raising capital. Does that make sense? I want to just pause real quick. I know it seems like maybe a nuance, and maybe I'm just wordsmithing this, but I want to make sure that that makes sense to people. If it does make sense, just say yes. Okay. Okay. Sounds good. See a lot of yeses coming in. Great. All right. Let's move on. Okay. So as I said, there's three C's to attracting capital, and I label them as these three, right? And this is I should put trademark pending, but I haven't done that yet. So the three are credibility, confidence, and connections. So we're going to get into all three right now. Okay. But remember, credibility, confidence, connections, those are the three C's to raising capital. All right. So the first one, let's talk about some myths versus reality. All right. The first myth when it comes to credibility is that in order to be credible, you need prior experience, right? You need to have experience as a multifamily investor so you can show people the deals that you've done, the returns that you've been able to generate for your investors, and all this other experience, right? So that's one myth. How many people believe in myth number one, or at least before I put this on the board, how many people felt like this was one of the things holding them back from attracting capital for deals? You can just put a four since we've run out of numbers, right? So put a four if this was one of those myths that you believed, right? The other myth was that you can just fake it till you make it, right? Hey man, who cares what experience you actually have? Just get out there, fake it, learn lingo, get out there, talk smooth, you'll be all right. How many people have heard that? Put a five in there. Okay. If you thought about just faking it till you make it, put a five in there. Okay. All right. So the reason I say that this is just not true. That's not how you do this. Okay. Credibility is real. It's a very important thing if you're going to be a successful investor and a capital raiser. Okay. So how do you build credibility, especially if you've never done a deal? Well, the first thing you can do is build an A team, right? So I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember the A team, but when I was a kid, I remember Mr. T and the A team coming through. But it's about building that collection of superstars around you, right? You have to play a role. You have to bring something to the table. We'll talk about that in a second. But build a team around you. I have a coaching client, and when he came to me, he said, listen, I've never done a deal, but I want to raise all this money. And I'm like, okay, why would someone invest with you then? And he paused and he said, well, I know some folks who have money. I said, I didn't ask you that. I said, why would they want to invest with you? You just told me you've never done a deal, right? So you can stop there because that's the first hurdle, or you can backtrack and say, you know what? While I've never done a deal, let me build a team of folks that have the capabilities, that have experience, that have the track record, and let me immerse myself on this team. Right. And if you have that A team, now you're in a position to be successful. And we say team, what do we mean? Right. We're talking about a partner potentially. We're talking about a coach or a mentor who's in your corner. We're talking about a property manager. We're talking about the brokers. We're talking about, anybody that you can surround yourself with to not just learn from, but to actually have a credible team. This isn't just so you can put together a slide deck and presentation and say, hey, look at all the people that are working with me. This is so you can truly build the resources around you to be successful. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? Just like building a team so you actually have the folks around you to be successful. I mean, if you guys are basketball fans, LeBron James is a great player, best player in the NBA. I don't care what you say, I'm from Cleveland, so you're not going to argue with me about this. But with that said, he still needs other superstars around him to win championships, right? He needs other role players around him to win championships. So you don't have to be LeBron in this case, though. You can be one of those other players and you can go find a LeBron. Now it's a little bit harder, but there are ways to build a team where you can leverage that success. Okay. So building a team, that's one way to build credibility. Okay. The second thing, you be professional and be transparent. What do I mean by that? Well, how you come across is completely up to you. If I put together a thorough presentation and I demonstrate to you what my business plan is, and the criteria of deals that I look for, the type of people who are best suited to invest with me, the markets we like and why we like them, if I put together a clean presentation where I lay out our business plan or our thinking, even if I have no experience, do you think that's going to go over well with some of the people I know versus me just picking up the phone and calling somebody and saying, hey, I want to buy this 50 unit apartment building. Do you want to invest $100,000 with me? Right? So, how you come across is really important as well. So, you want to be professional, be transparent with your experience, but you also want to build that up. The way you build that up is to highlight the wins you do have. While we don't have all the successes in the world from a real estate standpoint, if you don't have a long 10, 15-year track record, you may have other wins. So for me, going back to my corporate market or my corporate experience, I led 7 agency partners. So I was really good at project management. I oversaw $100 million advertising budget. So I was pretty good with knowing how to budget and how to manage teams. I was running marketing. So I was able to turn the Buick brand into one of the fastest growing brands in America, according to Ad Age. I was recognized by Black Enterprise Magazine as one of the hottest young professionals in marketing and advertising. So you take the wins you do have, you highlight those transferable skills, particularly in real estate and business, and you highlight those successes and how they would actually transition there. All right. So, I want to make sure everyone is understanding that, right? You have to highlight the successes you do have. Each and every one of us has successes. If you're applying for a job, you're going to put together your resume and you're going to highlight your wins. This is the same kind of thing. But in this case, it's not just highlighting the wins so it looks good on a resume. It's helping you build the credibility that you need to build the team that you need around you. Okay. 2 other things that you can do. One, be very knowledgeable. Know your stuff. If you know your stuff, even if you've never done a deal, if you can talk to me and use the lingo and use the terms, you're going to come across as credible. And I won't know the experience you have unless you tell me. But if you don't know the lingo or you don't know how to underwrite deals or you're not familiar with certain terms, when your credibility may suffer a little bit. And the last is to build trust. Trust isn't necessarily about just the instinct. It's about getting to know people. Are you a trustworthy individual? Are you someone that is transparent? Are you somebody that I want to do business with? So those are the things when we're talking about building credibility. If that makes sense, just go ahead and throw a 1. I'm gonna go back to the ones, but just throw a 1 in there if that makes sense. If you're following me so far, okay. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna give a short story, right? So I had another prospective client. We ended up not working with this guy. It just wasn't a fit. And as we were talking to him, he said, "Listen, I want to raise," he said, $3 million by the end of the year. And I said, "Okay, it's possible, but let's talk about where you're at right now." And he's like, "Well, I've never done a deal, and I'm actually getting ready to go through bankruptcy, and but I think we can raise money to these deals." And I said, "Look, I think part of what you have to do is build trust. And what you just told me is, things that are huge red flags for a lot of investors. So I can put that to the side. Give me some other reasons that investors should feel comfortable and confident working with you, right?" And he couldn't come up with anything. And at that moment, I said, "Listen, I would recommend you kind of get your house in order first. I don't think it's a fit to work with us, but I would say try to get your financials together. Try to figure out how you can build some micro wins, right? Get some mini wins on the table, and then you can start looking to work with other people. Because the thing that you need to understand is that when you're raising capital or attracting capital for deals, these investors are putting their trust and their faith in you, and you have to be ready to assume that responsibility. It is a responsibility. So if you're not ready to assume that responsibility and you're only thinking about how you get paid, you probably should pause and really ask yourself, can you protect the investor capital that you are looking to do? If you're not going to work with your mom or your dad or family members' money, that should be the first warning sign. We're going to come back to that as well, but ask yourself if you felt comfortable and confident enough to take mom and dad's money, then you're going to put in a certain caliber of work, right? If you don't want to take their money, that means you have some doubts, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Okay. This is just to give you a sense of, what we talk about when we mean trust. These are some of the most trusted brands. And this was a really interesting study. And it talked about the way the brands that are most trusted, the way they built this trust is really establishing personal one-to-one connections with consumers. Now, this is for big brands, right? So they talk about having to listen to what consumers actually say so you can address their wants and their needs. This is the same strategy. If you want to build trust with an investor, you have to listen to them to understand their wants and their needs. Most investors do not care about an IRR. Most of them don't even know what an IRR is. Most of them aren't as interested in understanding all the nuances of, your fancy terminology and your cap rates and all of that stuff. You need to learn it. So when you're talking to industry professionals, you're credible. But when you're talking to investors, that's not what they need to hear to understand, whether or not they trust you and want to work with you. So you need to listen to the people you're talking to, understand them. Once you understand their wants, their needs, now you can have conversations that help you develop trust. Okay. All right. Let's move on to confidence, the second C. All right. First myth here. Some people are just good at putting themselves out there. You might be listening to me and saying, "Oh, John's, he's smooth. I would never do this, or that's not my thing." How many people believe that, this is just this is only for people who are really extroverts and are good in front of a camera, good in front of a microphone? Put a 3 out there if you just think some people are natural born salesmen versus, actually the other routes. Put a 3 if you just think some people are just good at putting themselves out there, but that's something you struggle with. And then the second myth here is you can't be confident your first time doing something, right? So, as we talk about confidence, there may be a realization that, what, I've never done this before. I can't walk in here and pretend to be super confident knowing I've never done it. Put a 4 if that's something that is a belief that you hold right now. Okay. Okay. See, a lot of people are confident in this group. All right, good. All right, let's talk about confidence. Okay. Um, Shout out to the late Kobe Bryant. But you know, Kobe was the reason I chose this picture is Kobe Bryant was very well regarded for his work ethic, and I think one of the biggest things that we have to do is understand how do we build a skill set, and in this case, it's confidence. And a lot of people think that confidence is something that you're either born with or you get over time because you just have done it. But the reality is that confidence comes from within, and confidence is really about preparations. So we talked about the first step, right? It's educating yourself. So the more comfortable you are with knowing the material, knowing the cap rate, knowing the analysis, knowing all of those things about a deal, knowing the business plan, knowing the market, the more you educate yourself, the more confident you are going to be, right? Preparation builds confidence. In the picture, it's Kobe shooting a free throw, right? Pregame, and you see that there's really no other players on the court, right? There's like 1 or 2 guys on the other end, but it's just really Kobe on this side. Kobe was known for shooting 500 shots a day, right? And I'm gonna skip to the bottom here, but it didn't matter how many he made. Okay, it wasn't about making the shots. It was really about the routine of shooting the shots. So confidence comes from preparation, doing the work, practicing. And this is the hard part. And I would love to tell you guys that here's a little cheat sheet you can do and raise all the money you want. But the reality is that you can't manufacture confidence. You just can't. There's nothing I can tell you in this conversation that is going to automatically make you confident. Confidence comes from preparation. So part of that means understanding what to do to prepare. How do you build that confidence? It's a muscle. It's kind of like anything else, right? So you really need to work at it. One of the things you want to do to help build your confidence is step back and do an actual inventory of your skill set. Where are you strong? Where are you strong? Where are you weak? I have an investor friend who is phenomenal at speaking. I mean, listen, I love listening to this guy talk. He's amazing. He is terrible at email, right? He will not follow up. You'll send him an email. You won't hear from him. You got to call him on the phone. Like, hey, man, I sent you an email, right? So his communication, same thing, communication from a live in person standpoint is great. From a technology follow via email, it's terrible. So for him, you have to identify your weak spots. If you're great at this, you should probably have a system or another person in place that can help follow up with the emails. So you want to identify your weak spots so that that doesn't slow down every other aspect of the deal, right? If you have a great network, but you don't know how to approach them, that's fine too. There might be other ways to figure out a solution around that weak spot. But you want to figure out what you're really good at, what you enjoy, and where might you have some vulnerabilities, and then how can you shore up those vulnerabilities? Okay. And I will say this too: don't focus so much on the results. Too many people go out and they have a goal of raising $250,000, $500,000, $1 million, $100,000, and they're focused on that number. So when they go out and they start having their conversations, they have this pressure to raise whatever amount of money. So in the back of their head, they're approaching this whole conversation with, will this guy invest? Will this girl invest? Will this woman invest? You know, how much? Can I get them at 50? Am I going to hit my number? Will I not hit my number? And that pressure makes it very difficult, right? So I would tell you, don't focus on the results. Focus on the process. You want to shoot the free throw. If it goes in, it goes in. If it doesn't, figure out what you can tweak and adjust in your, your shot and keep shooting. Does that make sense? I want to pause and open this up to a little bit of Q&A right now, if that's cool. Is there a way to open up Q&A, Stefan?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, yeah, if
Do I stop sharing?
If you guys have questions, go ahead as well.
I have a question. I was listening to what you were saying about how to build confidence, and you said preparation builds confidence. And what I find I have a problem is I over prepare. Sometimes I prepare and prepare and prepare, and I never get to actually doing what it is I want to do, because after I've done so much preparation, I still don't feel confident.
So
or I feel like, it's taking me too long to prepare for this. Now it's a million other people that has the idea of what I wanted to do.
Give me an example, because it's I understand the question and the concern, but give me an example when you talk about over preparing.
Okay, so for example, I teach a financial literacy. Well, I taught a financial literacy class for a nonprofit organization, Bank on Hampton Roads. Okay. And I wanted to take what I learned and what I was doing in that class with those students, and I wanted to do it on another platform, just kind of change it up a little bit so on exactly what they had. And I prepared for this. I put all my lessons together, but when it got time for me to get ready to do it, I kind of clammed up.
Why'd you clam up?
I don't know.
No, be honest. You know why.
I guess I wasn't confident. I wasn't confident.
But what's the worst case scenario? What was the fear?
That, I don't know, people wouldn't receive what I had to say.
They didn't like the presentation, right? They
wouldn't like my presentation. They didn't get to see my presentation. I actually started it, and I did it as a Facebook Live. I started it, and then I kind of got scared. So, I just said I had some technical difficulties, and I just.
So wait, so you actually started it and stopped it in the middle?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Okay, look.
Yeah, I did.
That's all right. That's a new one. I've not heard that one before.
No, I did.
Do you have like stage fright or like anxiety talking in public?
I do.
But you did it. But you did it somewhere else, right?
I did it somewhere else. I did it in my class.
What changed?
I don't know. Maybe it was a different type of people, or different class of people, or different, a different group of people.
Okay. So let me broaden this out, because I think that this is something that probably a lot of people face, right? And when I was raising capital for my early deals, this was one of the things that really challenged me. And if you guys can relate, please put a smile or a thumbs up. I got the camera up now. The first time I had agreed to, be a partner in the deal, and I had to raise a certain amount of money as part of, what I was doing and what I told them I could do for the deal, as well with my marketing stuff and all those things. I now went from having hypothetical conversations with investors and friends and family and folks in my network to, oh, I have to go raise a chunk of money, right? And I never raised a dollar. I mean, if I raised money, it was for like a charity, and it was like, hey, if you want to donate, cool. If not, no worries. So to go in a situation where I had a number that I was expected to hit, the anxiety for me built up, and I sent out an email. I got some good response. And for me, there were two conversations in particular where, I mean, if you could have heard my heartbeat, like it probably was pounding out of my chest because I was so nervous. And the reason I was nervous is I gave too much stake to the people on the other end. Okay. The reason you're nervous, the reason you pulled out is because you cared about what other people thought. You were prepared, right? You were prepared. You set up to do it. But what if it went wrong? What if they didn't like the presentation? What if they whatever thought you were stupid? Like we go through all these things, right? We go to worst case scenario. What if they think I'm an idiot? What if they, blast me on social, whatever, right? Here's the reality. Most people don't care about those things. They don't care about you, me, like people don't care. They just don't. We're not sitting around with the scoreboard. And even if they do, if they don't like the presentation, so what? What's the worst that happens? They can either not hear the presentation and not know you exist, or hear the presentation and say, not for me, didn't like it, didn't like her, right? Those are the worst case scenarios. If you don't present, you still not getting anything.
Right.
So the upside of actually presenting is you may connect with someone who is looking for this thing. So when we get to the third C in just a moment, we're going to talk about how we overcome that. But I will tell you this, the biggest thing that any one of you can do is remove the attachment of success to the efforts you take. That's why on that last slide, I said, don't focus on the results. Focus on the process. It's not about making a shot. You don't get good shooting free throws by caring if that single free throw goes in. You get good by shooting. You're only going to get better at presenting, sales, investor conversations by having them. You have to remove the emotional attachment that it's a judgment on yourself. How many people understand what I'm talking about? If you see that conversation as an indictment on your own abilities, then the pressure is built up. Oh shit, excuse my language, but what are they gonna say if I fumble my words or I forget, how to do this calculation or whatever. When you built that up in your head and now you're going to talk to somebody, it's tough because in your head, you already built up all this pressure and expectations of how things are going to come out, right? So the best thing you can do is eliminate all of that. Your job is not to sell somebody or convert somebody or any of that stuff. You're having conversations. Some people it's going to be a fit. A lot of people it's not, right? It's numbers. You want to make 3-point shots, whatever sports analogy you use, but if you want to win, you got to play. So the first question you got to ask yourself is, do you want to play? Yes or no. If you want to play and you're scared about what happens, take that fear out and just chalk it up. And the only way you're going to do that is by doing it. I will tell you, I launched my podcast 3 years ago, and I was so hesitant to do video. The audio was good. I turned this off. Y'all can still hear me, right? I turned off the video for a second. I was good doing audio for whatever reason. No problem. Great doing audio. Enjoyed talking to people. The moment I had to do video, I was like, oh man, now I made up every excuse you could. Oh man, I don't have a haircut. I gotta like get dressed, you know what I mean? I gotta get a better camera. I made up all these reasons, right? And guess what? None of that stuff matters. It just doesn't. Yes, you get a better camera. Yes, I can get a haircut. Yes, I can do all those things. But that wasn't what was stopping me from doing video. What stopped me from doing videos, I was self-conscious of how I looked. I was self-conscious about different aspects of the way I came across, and I wasn't polished in my mind. And part of this for me just is I worked in advertising and marketing, so I'm used to being behind the camera. I'm used to being the guy who was critiquing and saying, "No, she didn't move her hair right," or that guy didn't say that line right. Do it again, another take. So I'm used to being that critical on this side. So to be the person in front of the camera for me was a bit, I don't want to say overwhelming, but it was very challenging to recognize that yes, some people are going to see it. But here's the reality: most people don't care about you like that. They just don't. Like I put up my first video, you know, how many people saw it. That many people saw that first video. And the next one got 2 views. And I'm pretty sure they didn't care about whether or not I had a haircut. They was listening to the materials. It either fit what they were trying to do or it didn't. And your personal brand is your personal brand. That's on you. But we get in our own heads. Somebody made a comment in here that, we are our own worst enemies. And that's exactly it. So take the pressure off of yourself. Your job is not to go out and raise money. That's why I said it's about attracting capital, right? If you put the pressure on you to raise money, then you put pressure on yourself to be responsible for the outcome. Okay. But if you position it where you are a resource for other people, just like any other business, then now you just figure out how do you do a better job of the marketing aspect, getting in front of the right folks. All right, I'm gonna get back into the presentation. Hopefully this continues to answer some of those questions as we go forward. Okay. Everybody still with me? I know it's a Tuesday night. I want to make sure y'all still with me. Y'all still with me? All right, cool. See, Linda's with me. I don't know about I didn't see anybody else, so maybe not. There we go. Got a yeppers. Yes. Okay. Appreciate it. Let me know because I some of y'all just have the names on the screen, so I can't see faces and it's hard to tell. So last thing I want is to be boring y'all to death. Like, dude, how long is this gonna be? All right, cool. All right, let's jump back into it. Just a couple more slides left, and then we'll go back into the Q&A. All right. Whoops. Reynaldo, I'm gonna answer your question specifically when we get to this next section, okay? All right, let's talk about connections real quick. All right, here we go. So myths. I hear this all the time, and I'm sure y'all do too. All right. So people say you should start with friends and family. If you've heard that, put a 6 in the chat box. Give me a 6 if you've heard or you believe that you should start with friends and family. Okay. All right, and number 7, the second myth is you won't attract new investors until you have experience. So drop a 7 in there if that's a myth you've heard, or if it's something that you believe that, hey, you know what, you got to gain experience before you go out and attract new investors. Okay, so see that from a few folks as well. Okay, and these are things that are pretty common. I mean, most of the clients I work with, this is, these are some of the questions or fears or things that they tell me when we first start working together. And there's some truth to this, but I'm going to call these myths. Okay, and here's why. Yes, you want to start with friends and family, but they are not your target investor. What do I mean by that? So here's what I mean. Your friends love you, your family loves you, right? That anxiety that some of us may have or maybe manufacture when we think about calling our brother or an aunt or whoever, or your friend who's an attorney, he's sitting on like a couple $1 million, whatever. That anxiety you face is really because what you're offering helps you, but you're not certain how it helps them, right? All the real estate stuff people tell you, right? They tell you, oh, good cash flow and diversification, all that, but you haven't decided whether or not that's what that person needs. I'm gonna take you back to that slide we did about building trust, right? If I can quickly go back and find it, right? So we talked about this one, right? And to build trust, you have to listen to what consumers say so you can understand and address their wants and needs, right? So when we start with family and friends, oftentimes we're not doing that. We're not really listening to our friends and family. We're telling them what we're doing. We're hoping they want to invest, right? So that's part of the reason, there's some anxiety or people struggle with it. I don't suggest starting with friends and family, at least not like that. I say what you want to do is you want to start building a network. You want to identify who your ideal audience is, right? Now, here's how you use your friends and family. Let's say that I was opening up a bakery. All right. So we got John's Bakery. I'm making, cupcakes and cakes and pastries. And if I went to my mom, love my mom, beautiful lady, and I said, "Hey, mom, I'm opening up a bakery. I need you to get 5 sheet cakes because I need to sell these sheet cakes." Right? She probably look at me crazy, right? But let's take Girl Scout cookies, right? Most of us have either been on one end of the Girl Scout cookie thing, right? So either you got a daughter or you're trying to push these Girl Scout cookies, or somebody in your office or a family member, friend, somebody's been trying to sell you some Girl Scout cookies. And maybe you love Girl Scout cookies. They're delicious, right? The trefoils are great. So maybe you love Girl Scout cookies, okay? But here's the deal. What if I came to you and said, "Hey, look, I got these Girl Scout cookies. Do you want to buy 50,000 of them?" You'd be like, "Dude, what? No." It's like, "No, you don't understand. You like cookies. I have 50,000 Girl Scout cookies to sell. Do you want to buy one?" Like, you probably think I was nuts, right? So you have to match up the consumer, the audience for the product or service. And a lot of times people don't do that, right? You just start going to friends and family and just calling and, "Hey, Uncle Jimmy, Uncle Tim, Uncle Chris." And that's not it, right? That's not attracting capital. That's the hard-nosed sales pounding the pavement trying to raise capital. So instead, what you want to do is if you need to sell 50,000 Girl Scout cookies, you probably shouldn't call your uncle and ask him about 50,000. You should probably figure out, hey, maybe there's some stores, some retailers, some larger institutions, whoever the ideal target audience is for that, that's who you should approach and say, "Hey, would you like to buy 50,000 orders of Girl Scout cookies?" This is the same thing. Figure out who you serve best and then reach out to those folks. And here's how you use your friends and family. I don't know if you're taking notes. I know you're recording this stuff, but if you want to write down one thing, this is probably the thing you want to write down. The way you leverage your friends and family is you reach out to them, you share exactly what you do, why you're excited about it, but you tell them who you help. And then you ask them, do they know anyone who fits that profile? Right? Let's go back to my 50,000 Girl Scout cookies. And um, let's just say that I wanted to sell it to a company, and I might say, "Hey, look, we're doing this fundraiser. I got to sell 50,000 Girl Scout cookies. I don't expect you to buy 50,000, but do you know anyone who owns a company that has a retreat coming up because we want to do like some Girl Scout activations, right? So any company or any nonprofit organizations, if you know anyone who fits that bill, let me know." Let's go back to the bakery example. I call my mom, my lovely mom, and I say, "Hey, mom, I'm opening up this bakery. I'm really focused on helping, birthdays, anniversaries, and weddings, even though in this COVID environment, that might not be the best idea unless you deliver. But nonetheless, that's what I want to serve. 'Cause I just do larger sheet cakes and larger pieces. So, do you know anybody who's having a wedding, an anniversary, or birthday coming up? I'd love an introduction so I can share what we offer, maybe give them a sampling and talk to them about my bakery." Now, don't you think that would work way better than asking my mom to buy, 5 sheet cakes? Because now my mom can start thinking, okay, who has an anniversary coming up? Who has a birthday coming up? Who has, a wedding coming up? Oh, you know what? Your cousin Sheila's getting married, this summer. You should reach out to your cousin Sheila. Bam. Now she's working her network for you. So picture your network like this. Your friends and family are right here. It's not to ask them to invest with you. Listen, if they're the fit, great. But they got their own networks. Boom, 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 boom. So if you could tap into their networks, now you can find your ideal investor. And that's the whole goal of building connections, right? Is trying to figure out how do you build connections that allow you to grow. Okay. Does that make sense to everybody? If it makes sense, just say a yes in the chat box. All right, cool. How we doing on time? I feel like I'm running long. So here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna do another couple wrap-up slides here, then open up for the Q&A and whatever else you guys want to do. All right, so the 3 C's to attracting capital, to recap: 1, credibility. It's highlighting your previous wins, right? So not just you, but the team that you've put together. Confidence comes from preparation and practice. And then the connections is about people and problems. Who do you want to connect with? What problems do they have? And how do you solve those problems? Okay, if you focus on those things, you will be successful in raising capital. There are 3 other C's, which we don't really have time to get into. I'll answer specific questions on this if you guys want at the end. But the other 3 C's are, this is more about doing it consistently, right? So that's channel. So that's how you communicate with someone. So that's going to be, is it through phone calls? Is it through text message? Is it through email? Is it through webinars or meetups like this? Is it through a podcast, right? So what channel are you using to connect with investors? What is the communication or the message? What are you actually saying? What's the message that you're using? And then the last is consistency. You know, if someone shows up one time, you're going to forget about them. But if you guys attend this meetup every month, or you listen to my podcast every week, you'll see that I show up consistently. Stefan shows up consistently. So that consistency allows you to build credibility and trust so that it's easier to attract capital. So those are the other 3 C's. We've talked about this already, the difference between attracting versus raising. And then what I'll say is that if you haven't subscribed to the show, please do. I mean, it's a really good platform. It's free. It's Target Market Insights. It's anywhere you listen to podcasts. And then we do have a sample deal package on our website. And this is for any active investor, passive investor. But if you want to figure out how to put together a deal package, what should you include? What kind of things should you put into a presentation? You can download that. It's free. It's just go to casmoncapital.com/sample deal. You will get added to our email list where you'll get some other, investing tips and marketing tips on investing. But I think that would be a great resource for you. And then lastly, if you are interested in learning more about the coaching program we have, you can go to capitalimpactclub.com and learn more about the coaching program. Okay. I'm going to leave this up for a second, just in case anybody wants to jot down any notes. I can also drop this in the chat box. But I'll leave it up for just a second. And then, we can open it back up for questions.
All right, I have a lot of questions, so you guys go ahead first.
I have a question.
Yes. Tell me your name. Say your name for me.
So my name is Targan,
Hey,
and from the Midwest as well. Hey, but I currently live in Florida, and my question is, I'm looking to target a niche group of people. I'm a veteran, so I'm going after my veteran to build capital, and I guess where my I want to know where the gray line is, or just have a better understanding, is by creating a syndication. Do I have to worry about like SEC laws and things like that if I'm getting a large sum of money from a group of people, or where does it kind of separate from just raising general capital to go after investment properties?
Yes. So let me say this for everyone. Anytime you're doing an investment where the investors are passive, meaning they do not control the operations, they're not active, they can't control the bank accounts, that kind of stuff, you are technically doing a syndication. You're offering a secured, the syndication is really just a fancy way of saying that there are multiple investors and you are offering a securities, because that's what you're doing. So the short answer is you're doing that, period. If that's what you're looking to do, if these people are not actively involved in the business, then you're offering a securities, which is a syndication. So does that answer your question?
Yes. So then what happens to as far as coverage on my end that I have to worry about for protection?
So what you'll need to do is work with an SEC attorney, and the way the deals are set up. And there was a question earlier too. Hopefully I'll answer this as well. The way the deals are structured, what you're typically going to do is create a new LLC. You're going to have two different classes of shares. And I know this is in the weeds, so apologies. I normally don't like to get this deep in the weeds, but you're going to do two classes of shares: general partner share, limited partner share. And then together, that LLC is going to own the investment. So when you work with an SEC attorney, they're going to help set you up for your legal protection. But you're going to create a new entity that's going to own that property, and then by being on the general partner side, you will have some isolation from particular things, but there may be some other strategies you may want to employ to further insulate yourself from lawsuits or whatever the case may be. But you should talk to the FCC attorney on that. But yeah, they'll set it up that way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't get dinner, so I'm snacking. I hope y'all okay with that. I'm just gonna eat a little snack here.
Hey, John, this is Ronaldo speaking. How you doing?
How you doing, Ronaldo?
Thank you so much for the presentation. I learned so much. I'm pretty new to real estate, maybe eight months in it. Joined a firm, and so far, my question relates to kind of the trust credibility slide. I have right now no issue getting trust from investors to trust me. That's the good news, which is kind of hard for many of us. The hard part on my end is that they don't trust the company. This company that I represent, they've been around since 1973. So now the co-founders are kind of in their 70s, and they're not tech savvy. So one of the challenges I get from investors is, hey, I can't find anything online about your company. So that kind of makes them feel skeptical about the whole process. So right now what I've been doing is that I've encouraged the co-founders to create videos online, like a YouTube video, to share their experiences. That way they can learn more from them because they're the experts. Right now I'm just building relationship building with them, where I meet with them once or twice a month to kind of show them the new updates about the company, videos, all that stuff. But I wonder if you had any advice for me to help get over that roadblock of people who kind of feel skeptical because they can't find anything online. But it's not their fault, the co-founders, because they're just it's a new generation, right? Back in the 70s, we didn't have social media or blogging, all that stuff. So it's kind of doing that transformation.
What is the company, like a syndication company or brokerage, or what exactly is the company?
So they're a real estate investment firm, like private equity.
Okay.
Focus on commercial apartment buildings, Southeast, secondary markets, so from 100 to 400 units.
Okay. I'd love to learn more. So let's just, we can table that if you wouldn't mind maybe reaching out. I'd love to learn a little bit more. Something that's really important, and I think this is a really great point. It is 2021. Google is one of the biggest companies in the world. Apple, if I can't find you online, you don't exist. So I don't care that you've been around since the 70s. At some point in the last 20 years, somebody should have been like, yo, we need a website. Yo, we need a presence, right? And if you haven't done that, then you either don't care or you're running a scam. That's what people are going to think. And I'm not going to stop the process, which one it is. I just know I'm out. So I don't know, tell them, get a website up. Like you said, have the videos, show the track record, show the portfolio. But you need social proof in today's world. If you don't have social proof, you're not real. It's just that simple. I mean, it goes back to the credibility, right? You can build presentations. It doesn't necessarily have to be like everything online, but if you're having those conversations, it's like, okay, well, what are you presenting to them to make them comfortable? And I would say, like, you probably want to show properties or whatever the case may be, but you need social proof. Social proof is a real thing. If people cannot find you online, they're just not, like, could you imagine like any big company and not being able to find them online today? Like, in what world would you ever do business with a company you can't find online? Like, and think about it from a consumer standpoint. I think sometimes people they use the technology thing as as an excuse, and I'm definitely calling it an excuse, because what that tells a consumer is this is kind of the way you guys do business. So you're stuck in your ways, and you're probably not going to, work with me in a way. You're probably not tech savvy in the way you communicate, the way you send out your K1s, the way you update me on the property. Like, if you can't put together a website, I'm assuming you're just gonna send me a K1 in the mail once a year, and that might be the only time I hear from you, right? So all of these little things go into it. I'll go back to the professionalism, right? If you don't have credibility, one of the things that any one of us can do is work on how we come across in the professionalism, the way we communicate. Communication is online too. If you go Google me, you're going to check to see, okay, what do I find when I Google this guy? And it doesn't have to be 15 years of track record, but I at least want to see somebody who has some sort of social proof that they exist in this space and they're capable of doing what they say they can do. And if they don't have that, then they're, like I said, they just, Tracy, if they're doing that, then they're just missing an opportunity. And it's just, I mean, again, in 2021, if I can't find you online, I'm not even gonna bother with you, and that's even for people dating. Like, if you were single and dating, like, and you Google somebody and you can't find them on any social media platform or anything about them, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, nothing, I'm concerned. Cause I'm like, I don't know what you hiding. Did you change your identity? Like, if I can't find any of the basic stuff about you, man, red flags everywhere. So, and that's the date, right? So if I'm about to invest thousands, 50,000, $100,000 with you, and I can't even find anything online, you might be running a Ponzi scheme or what? Like, nah, man, like, no. So if I were you, you need to push them on the importance of this. It's not a joke. It's not even an option. It's like, you need to have a social presence. You're not real. And again, it depends on goals. If they got a few old buddies that they call and they get all the money they need, then you're not solving a real problem. So if they got all the capital, but if they actually want to grow and attract newer, younger capital, yeah, you're gonna need to have some sort of social presence.
Thank you.
Hey, John, thanks so much for doing this. I do have a question.
Yes.
We spoke about reaching out to our family and friends, and we probably need some clarity here. Thinking about a 506B, and so pre-existing relationships are probably needed there. So when we reach out to family and friends and they reach out to their sphere of influence and that I don't personally know, how do you kind of cross that? How do you kind of close that gap for those individuals that you really don't know personally when you're thinking about a 506B?
That's a phenomenal question. I'm glad you brought that up, right? Because with 506B, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, the way the SEC sets it up, there's two groups that they allow you to use to raise capital. There's actually more, but let's just focus on the main two. 506B allows you to work with friends and family, so you have to have some sort of pre-existing relationship. 506C is only for accredited investors, but you do not have to have a pre-existing relationship. They just have to be accredited, and you can market, you can do whatever you want to find those people. So with 506B, when you're doing a deal like that, to work with kind of the network of your friends and family, part of it is that you want to start before you have a deal. Too many people start the process when you have a deal under contract. It's too late. Again, it's like trying to practice your sport the day of the game. You know what? Like, if you haven't shot free throws all season and you got a game today, so you decide 30 minutes earlier you're gonna start shooting free throws in practice, it's too late. You should have been building that muscle all the off season, right? So it's a similar thing. When you get into the deal, the clock is running, you got a tight window, all of those things, right? So what I strongly suggest to all of my clients and to you all as well, you want to start this process as early as humanly possible, right? If this is what you're going to do, you want to start, build up your professionalism. I have a whole thing to help people come across as professional and credible, and highlight your wins. Talk to your network, try to expand that network, right? So you can get a read on who wants to invest, who's interested. So when you do have a deal, you've already established some rapport and you have a bit of a relationship and you know what they're looking for. So once you have that, now it's easier to kind of transition to the next level. But I would say you've got to do that earlier than, live deal, calling auntie, saying, hey, auntie, anybody wants to invest? It's a little late at that point.
John, I have a question. So yes, so you're a professional marketer, right? So that's a great opportunity for me, for example, as a finance guy, to get like some insight that pretty much most other people don't have, right?
Yeah.
So now in the fifth C that you have in your like in your presentation, so the fifth C channel, for example, so there you have like, let's say what specifically for, because the target customer of multifamily syndicator, for example, is pretty much narrowly defined. It's not like super broad in a sense. Now there can be some variety there as well, but it's pretty much narrowly defined. So for that specific target customer, are there certain industry statistics for what channels work better? Like if you would take, for example, consumer product, I believe it would be 30% email. Okay, then you have Shopify, you have all those other things. Now in multifamily syndication, it appears it's like 90% email or something. Like what are the channels for getting investor leads that you see as a professional marketer who sort of takes a more structured approach to it?
That's a great question. I'm going to try to answer your question without being dodgy. One of the most important steps that I take when I work with my clients is helping them to define their investor avatar. And what that process consists of is really imagining who they're best suited to serve. I love the word serve, and I'm intentionally using the word serve. Who are they best qualified to serve? Everybody wants the numbers, right? Who has the most money? Who's most likely to invest in syndications? Okay, doctors, engineers, private equity people. Like I can give you some of that, right? That doesn't mean they want to invest with you. So how helpful is it, right? I don't have a connection. Versus, again, my brother's a doctor. My brother-in-law is a doctor. I know a lot of syndicators who are doctors or come from high net worth fields, and guess what? It's great for them because they have that connection. Tracy said she's also from the Midwest, right? Or not Tracy, I'm sorry. Who was that? Targan, I believe, says she's from the Midwest. So it's about who you are best suited to serve. And as you build a brand, how you connect. Think about it like this. There's Adidas, Reebok, and Nike. They all make the same products, right? So you could say, oh, they're going after runners and basketball players and they have the same audience. That's not true. A person who likes Nike and prefers Nike probably is not working with Adidas or Puma or New Balance, right? People select brands for different reasons. So on the marketing side of it, ask yourself about the brand. And people think like, oh, brand is not just random marketing stuff. Brand is all the things we just talked about. Go back to Reynaldo's thing. He's got a company that has a lot of experience doing syndication, but nobody knows about them, right? So from a brand standpoint, yes, some people are going to like that, but there are also going to be a lot of people who want to feel like they can go online and research and get that comfort level. So what's really important is understanding how you build a brand and connect with people and who you're best suited to serve. I know a lot of folks who work with people who are trying to work with military professionals for very specific reasons. So they're focused on connecting with military professionals. The way they do that is a little bit different than maybe the way I do it with my audience. But if you can understand who you're serving, who you're connecting with, that's going to allow you to connect with people at a different level. Because there are groups that no matter what, I just can't walk into. I'm not the silver spoon kid, so I can't walk into certain environments and connect and engage and attract capital from certain groups just because they just won't connect with me like that. And that's fine. I can't win with everyone. You can't win with everyone. The moment you recognize that and stop trying to just go after the biggest thing and say, hey, can I go deep with this group? Whether it's military professionals, whether it's corporate professionals, whether it's engineers, whatever it is, right? Figure out who you're best suited to serve and then actually serve them. And what are the challenges that they face? It might be different than a challenge a doctor faces or an engineer faces or a private equity firm faces. But if you can serve them, now you open yourself up to the right channels, the right message, the right frequency. All those things become a little bit clearer when you get clarity on who you're actually talking to. I see a question here about touching back on payback in contracts. Sure. I'll try to keep this high level because there are a lot of different ways to do this, but essentially when you are putting together deals, there's two ways you can structure it. You can do a JV deal, which is a joint venture, meaning that two parties are coming together to buy a property. Usually the other person needs to have an active role. I do know that some folks might do one investor is really more of a private lender, but that's up to you if you want to structure it that way. And you can structure really however you want. As far as the equity split, what's common is 50-50 on a straight JV or a 70-30 or 80-20, depending on the roles and responsibilities. When it's syndication, if you're raising money from multiple people, then you're going to be syndicating the deal. And in that case, there's a general partner arm and a limited partner arm. The general partner is what you are and your partners. They're getting anywhere between 50% on the high end down to, I mean, I saw a group doing 12% deals. I wouldn't go that low, but I've seen it. 12% equity with the rest going to the investors. As far as the payback, that's going to be based on the business plan. So you're either going to divide up a portion of the proceeds and profits, and then you can, I mean, there are a lot of different terms you can put in there and get it as complicated as you want, but essentially you're going to be distributing profits, and then once you sell or refinance, you're going to distribute those profits based on the initial investment. Obviously, when you sell a property, they're going to get their initial money back plus whatever profits that the property generated.
Hey, John, just another question in terms of the raising capital. When you get out there and before you get a deal, if you're using a sample deal package or something like that to raise, at least inform people about it, and you find folks who are interested, but you really don't have a live deal yet, do you ask for soft commitment up front, or how do you handle that in terms of getting a commitment from the individuals, or you just take them at their word? How does that work?
It's a good question. The reality is that until you have a live deal, their commitment doesn't mean much, right? So what I would say is you use it as an opportunity to learn more about them. So if they say, hey, this looks pretty good, you can get a soft commitment could be anything from a verbal saying, yeah, this looks good, man. If you find a deal like this, I'd be interested in investing. That's great. If you get, yeah, it sounds cool, something more vague, then that's good too, I guess, but you're not going to know until you have a real deal. And just because someone say, yes, I'm interested in investing, today on your hypothetical, doesn't mean that, 60 days later or 90 days later, when you present the real deal, their situation hasn't changed. So what I suggest people do is find a way to structure and kind of manage those relationships and conversations. So we work with our clients on just like how to set up a system to treat this like a business, right? When you're having those conversations, here's how you track it, here's how you follow up, and here's how you stay engaged.
Right. So it's not like a situation where you may have a $25, $50, or $100,000 checkoff box, and you kind of have them kind of sign anything up front on that level. You don't get that.
No, you're not going to get them to sign. I mean, you can certainly have them say, yes, I'm interested in investing around 50K, but I mean, it's not worth anything. I mean, it's good for you to just have a general sense, right?
Right.
Of like, okay, I've talked to 10 people. If 6 out of 10 invest, that'll be X amount of dollars. But I mean, it's not committing them to it's not committing them to the investment.
Right. I was just thinking it may be a guidance. If you need to do a $2 million raise, then you at least get a ballpark as to where you are and stuff.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. That's just to help you kind of track down where you're at in the process and all of that.
Okay. All right. Thanks much.
Absolutely.
John, I have one last question for you also. How do you feel about crowdfunding?
It's interesting you asked that. I just interviewed a young lady who was the CMO for Patch of Land. And we're going to be doing something on Clubhouse next week and talking about, really crowdfunding and just that platform. And I mean, we're going to hint on that. It's not really going to be about that. We're going to talk more about raising capital from the investor standpoint. So she actually represents investors, and I want to talk from, because I think I always at least feel like I talk about capital raising, but I think the best way to learn to be a better capital raiser is to actually talk to investors and learn what they want, kind of what we just talked about, right? Listening to our investors. Crowdfunding is a great tool. It's one of those things where it's less personal. So if you are a newer investor or you don't have that track record, it may be more difficult for you to just throw a deal out there, right? Because it's not like you're showing, hey, I've got 25 years experience and here are the numbers, do the deal if you want, do the deal if you don't. Those are typically more accredited investors who they can look at the numbers, see the track record and the experience, throw $100,000 at a deal. If that's not your investor database, or if you don't have the portfolio, the track record, the team to play in that space, it may be harder for you to win. Not to say you can't. Certainly, people do, but I think in that space, it's less impersonal. So there's gonna be more competition, and if you just got to be honest with where you're at, right? If you can't put up a deal against the guy who's doing a Class A new development, in Dallas, and he's promoting 18-19% IRR, and they've got $1 billion under management, and you've got and I'm not saying you, but I'm saying if this is your second deal, it's just if on this platform these are the options, they're not going to pick you. So I just think you got to be realistic about how you stack up against the competition on some of those platforms versus building your own network and kind of engaging your own network.
It seems like it would be more about the story, and like you said, your avatar and connecting to your audience, so that those who are wanting to invest in you or the story, or what's the purpose, you would have more of more success, versus if it was just, I have this deal, who's interested in making some money, and then like you said, that whole impersonable situation comes in. But I think if you sell, and that's more from your marketing side, if you sell more of your story and who you're helping, if that would be a route to kind of go down. Just trying to see what you thought about that.
Yeah, and I would say too, the thing that makes crowdfunding interesting is maybe the different minimums. Because if you can do a deal where the minimum is say 1,000 or 5,000, then yes, you can compete, because people might just throw the money at it, especially against someone who is otherwise considering investing $100,000. They might say, instead of investing 100,000 in one deal, maybe I'll take 10,000, invest in 10 deals, right? So they're diversifying. So that may work for you as well. It just depends, and I haven't spent enough time on those platforms. We've been approached multiple times, and honestly, just the way they want their splits, it just doesn't make sense. And honestly, there's no guarantee that they're going to perform. So if you're raising money for a deal and you're expecting $500,000 to come from this crowdfunding platform, but they're running it and they're controlling that side of it, what if they don't perform? Now you're stuck in trying to scramble, and I just think that puts you in a behind eight ball a little bit. So
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So John, if we just focus just quickly on the online marketing side, for example, so what would be, let's say, if you have a buyer of a consumer product, and then you have an investor in a multifamily, right? What are some platforms that are more suitable in both cases? Let's say for the consumer product, maybe it would be your website as a platform is something very appropriate, or maybe Instagram is a better platform than Twitter is, or than YouTube is, and things like that. I mean, are there some general statistics? Let's say for a multifamily investor, would you say Facebook, YouTube are better than Instagram and even your website, or etc.? I don't know. What are some things that you see in that broadly? It can vary, I'm sure, across everybody finds different routes successful, but what do you see in the industry? I'm just curious as a marketer.
Yeah, so I hate to sound like a broken record, but I'm going to say that you really want to understand your avatar and fish where the fish are, right? So you mentioned like if you're trying to go after deals or going after investors. So let's just pick one for the sake of our conversation and say we're looking to go after deals, right? So I'm looking to go after owners. If I'm looking to connect with owners, I got to figure out who they are, where they're at, where they like to, spend their time. Most owners are older, kind of like the people Reynaldo talked about, right? So if they're in their 70s or whatever the case may be, are they hanging out on Clubhouse? Probably not. Are they hanging out on IG? Maybe, but can you have that kind of dialogue there? Probably not. LinkedIn though might be a great place to find some of these people, right? Facebook, almost everybody has a Facebook account now. It may not be why they use Facebook, but certainly you might be able to find those people. Now, if you were to post something, very few people are going to see it. So you might have to work out some paid post or figure out a marketing strategy to figure out how do you get in front of the right people. You can do some targeted ads towards people who have an interest in multifamily in the markets that you want to connect with, and then kind of build a funnel. A funnel is basically just a way to take people from not knowing you even exist to being aware that you exist, to considering doing business with you, to actually trying your business, to becoming kind of a loyal customer. So that's like a marketing funnel. So there are lots of ways to do that, right? I mean, in that case, I would probably say, hey, I'd spend more time on LinkedIn. If you can target people on Facebook based on the behavior profile of an owner, then I'd do that. And then, you may want to look at Twitter. I mean, I don't know if Twitter would actually work or not, but you may want to look into that. And then outside of that, you would probably just look to engage with, your platforms. So if I'm an owner, that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Outside of that, what I would say is when you're trying to get investors, they're everywhere, but you have to focus on who you want to win with. Because if you try to be everything for all people and be everywhere, you're not going to win. You're just not. So if you want to do the Clubhouse thing, go at it and be great at it. You want to go Twitter, go at it. Find the people who are looking for the information you have. Win. Facebook is hard, but you can definitely do it on Facebook. You got a lot of friends and family here. Just share what you're doing, right? So the platform is less, it doesn't matter, to be honest with you. It just doesn't matter. What matters is where's the audience and how do you drive the right message to that audience at the right time. And the only way you're going to know that is by talking to them, getting to know them, learning about their frustrations, their fears, the things that get them excited, their desires, and understanding how your opportunities can play a role in connecting with that individual. I'm trying not to be dodgy and actually answer the questions directly, but I know that was a lot. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Okay, so guys, we're quite over time. So if you, maybe last question, if you want to go ahead. Okay, so thank you. This was really awesome. That was so good. Thanks, John. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for sticking with us. I know it's an hour and a half now. So appreciate you all sticking with the conversation. I know it ran a little long. But if I can help any of you, please feel free to reach out. Here, I'll drop my email in the chat box, I guess, real quick. I mean, you've got it too, so you can send it to everyone, but let me just drop it here in the chat box. Okay. And then, like I said, I think we try to put together resources to help investors. So if you go to my website, you'll see the sample deal. You'll find, some other stuff that we put together. So I'd encourage you to peruse that a little bit, check out the podcast. And, if I can help from any other way, please feel free to reach out and we can talk about it. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks
Absolutely.
everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Have a good night.
Good night.